The second time she said no, she didn't even look up from her phone. Just, I'm not interested. No explanation, no apology, like I wasn't worth the effort of eye contact. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. Then I walked away. And that's when everything changed. But first, here is when it all started. I moved to this town 6 months ago. Small place. Population maybe 15,000. The kind of town where everyone knows everyone and strangers are noticed immediately. I didn't want to be noticed. I wanted the opposite. I rented a modest apartment above a bookstore on Main Street. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, nothing flashy. I drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic I'd bought off Craigslist for $6,000 cash. I wore jeans and plain t-shirts, sneakers that had seen better days. I shopped at the local grocery store, got my coffee at the same cafe every morning. To everyone in that town, I was just some guy, mid-30s, quiet, kept to himself. And that's exactly what I wanted them to think. Because 6 months before I moved there, I'd sold my company. Not a small exit, a life-changing exit. The kind of number that gets written about in tech publications with headlines like, "Startup founder sells to Fortune 500 for undisclosed sum." The sum was $1.6 billion. After taxes, legal fees, and paying out early investors, I walked away with $1.01 billion. I was 34 years old, and I was exhausted. Exhausted from the pressure, the meetings, the constant performance. Exhausted from people wanting things from me. Investors wanting direction, employees wanting direction, journalists wanting quotes. Exhausted from dating women who Googled my net worth before the second date. So I did something most people thought was crazy. I disappeared. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my family, not my closest friends. I hired a lawyer to handle my estate quietly, set up trusts, structured everything so I could live off passive income without anyone tracing it back to me. Then I picked a random small town in the Pacific Northwest that I'd driven through once and thought looked peaceful. And I moved there. No fanfare, no announcement. Just vanished into a normal life. For the first time in 10 years, I woke up without an agenda. No emails that couldn't wait, no calls I had to take, just coffee, a walk, a book. It was the most freedom I'd ever felt. I'd been there about 2 months when I first saw her. She worked at the local farmers market on Saturdays, not as a vendor, just helping her friend who sold handmade jewelry. She was striking, not in an Instagram model way, in a real way. Dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, no makeup, worn jeans and a faded band t-shirt. She was laughing at something her friend said, and I don't know why, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. Not about her net worth or her connections or what she could do for me, just her. I went back the next Saturday, bought a bracelet I didn't need. She rang me up, smiled politely, said, "Have a nice day," the way people do when they're being professional, not personal. I went back the Saturday after that, bought another bracelet. This time she noticed. "You really like jewelry, huh?" I smiled. "Gifts for my sister." It wasn't true. I was just nervous. She nodded, didn't push it. But I saw something flicker across her face. Not interest, just awareness, like she'd registered me as a human instead of a transaction. The fourth Saturday, I finally worked up the nerve. I didn't plan it, didn't rehearse. I just walked up to the booth after the crowd thinned and said, "I know this is random, but would you want to grab coffee sometime?" She looked up, and for just a second, I thought she was going to say yes. But then her eyes flicked down at my worn sneakers, my faded jeans, my old Honda parked across the street, and her expression changed. Not cruel, just practical. "I appreciate it, but I don't think we're really in the same place in life." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, like she didn't want to be rude. I'm looking for something serious, and I don't think..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I nodded, said no problem even though it didn't feel like no problem. walked back to my car, and as I drove home, I realized what had just happened. She'd looked at me and made a calculation based on my car, my clothes, my apparent lack of anything impressive. She'd decided I wasn't worth her time. And the strangest part? I wasn't even angry. I was just surprised. Because for the first time in a decade, someone had judged me for having too little instead of too much. And I didn't know how to feel about that. I didn't go back to the farmer's market for a few weeks. Not because I was hurt. I wasn't. I just didn't see the point. But one Saturday, I ran into her at the grocery store. She was in the cereal aisle comparing prices on 2 boxes. I grabbed what I needed from the same aisle and turned to leave. "Hey." I stopped. She was looking at me, smiling, friendly. "I thought that was you. Have you been?" I could tell she felt bad about the rejection. She was being nice, compensating. "Good," I said. "You?" "Good. Busy." There was a pause, and then, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, I said, "If you ever change your mind about that coffee..." Her smile faltered. "Look," she said, and her voice was kind but firm. "I seem like a nice guy, but I'm not looking for casual. Neither am I." She sighed. "I just don't think we're in the same place. I'm trying to build a stable life. I need someone who's established." There it was again. Established. Code for employed, ambitious, upwardly mobile, and not whatever you appear to be. I nodded slowly. Got it. And this time, I meant it. I walked away, and I decided that was the last time I'd put myself out there in this town. A month went by. I fell back into my quiet routine. Mornings at the cafe, afternoons reading or hiking, evenings cooking simple meals and watching old movies. It was peaceful. Lonely sometimes, but peaceful. And then one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was at the cafe, sitting in my usual corner with a book, when the owner, Dan, mid-50s, good guy, approached my table. "Hey man, can I ask you something?" "Sure." He sat down, looked uncomfortable. "You ever do any consulting work?" I raised an eyebrow. "Depends. What kind?" "Business stuff. I'm thinking about expanding, maybe opening a second location, but I don't really know how to structure it, or if it's even a good idea." I leaned back. "Why are you asking me?" He shrugged. "I don't know. You just seem like someone who's done things. You've got that vibe." I almost laughed. "What vibe?" "Like you've been somewhere, done something. I can't explain it." I thought about it. I didn't need the money, didn't need the distraction, but I liked Dan, and honestly, I missed using my brain. "I'll take a look at your numbers, no charge." He tried to insist on paying me. I refused. 2 days later, he emailed me a mess of spreadsheets and half-formed business plans. I spent a weekend cleaning it up, restructured his model, identified his margins, built a growth projection that actually made sense. Sent it back with notes. Dan called me immediately. "Dude, this is professional. Like really professional. It's just basic business planning. Where'd you learn this?" "I used to do it for a living." "Doing what?" "Consulting." It wasn't technically a lie. He was silent for a moment. "Well, if you ever want to do it again, I know at least 5 other business owners in town who'd pay for this." I told him I'd think about it, but word travels fast in small towns. By the end of the week, 3 people had reached out asking if I did business consulting. I helped 2 of them, didn't charge, just helped. And that's when people started looking at me differently. Not dramatically, just slightly. The barista who usually just took my orders started asking how my day was. The guy at the hardware store remembered my name. People nodded when they passed me on the street. I wasn't just some guy anymore. I was the guy who helped Dan, the guy who knows business stuff. It was subtle, but it was there. And then, about 2 weeks later, I ran into her again. I was leaving the post office when she walked in. She saw me, smiled. Hey. There was a pause. I heard you've been helping people with their businesses, she said. I shrugged. A little. That's really cool. I didn't know you did that. You didn't ask. It came out sharper than I intended. Her smile faded slightly. You're right. I'm sorry. She meant it. I could tell. It's fine, I said. Another pause. Look, she said, I know I was kind of dismissive before. You don't owe me an explanation. I know, but I want to give you one anyway. We stood there in the parking lot. She took a breath. I've dated a lot of guys who didn't have their shit together, and I convinced myself every time that it would be different, that I could make it work, and it never did. So you assumed I was one of them. Yeah, and that wasn't fair. I didn't say anything. For what it's worth, I think I misjudged you. You did. She winced. I'm sorry. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized something. She wasn't trying to get something from me now that she thought I was established. She was just trying to be honest, trying to own her mistake. Apology accepted, I said. She smiled, relieved. So, would you still want to get coffee sometime? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to prove a point, to let her feel what rejection feels like. But that's not who I am. Sure, I said. Her face lit up. Really? Yeah, but let's be clear about something. What? I'm not looking for casual either, and I don't date people who are interested in me because they think I can do something for them. She nodded quickly. I'm not, I swear. Okay. We exchanged numbers, set a date for that Friday, and as I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That Friday, we met at a small Italian restaurant on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, checkered tablecloths, candles, and wine bottles. She showed up in a simple dress, hair down, nervous smile. We talked for 3 hours. About her life, her job. She was a freelance graphic designer, working towards starting her own agency someday. About her family, her goals, her fears. She asked about me. I told her the truth. Most of it, anyway. I told her that I'd worked in tech, that I'd built something, that I'd stepped away when it got too much. I didn't tell her how much money I'd made. Didn't tell her I sold a company. Didn't tell her I could retire 10 times over and never work again. Because I wanted to know if she liked me. Not what I'd done, not what I had. Just me. And she did. I could tell. Not because she was trying to impress me, but because she laughed at my terrible jokes. Because she leaned in when I talked. Because when I walked her to her car, she hesitated before getting in, like she didn't want the night to end. I had a really good time, she said. Me too. Can we do this again? Yeah. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, drove away. And for the first time since I'd moved to that town, I felt like I'd made the right choice. Not about the money, not about the anonymity, about giving someone, and myself, a real chance. We saw each other twice a week after that. Coffee dates, walks, dinners. She introduced me to her friends. I introduced her to, well, Dan, and a couple other people I'd helped. It was normal, easy, real. And I started to think maybe I could keep this going. Maybe I could stay anonymous forever. Maybe the past didn't have to matter. But then, about 6 weeks into dating, something happened. We were at her apartment. She was showing me some design work she'd done for a local nonprofit. Her laptop was open on the coffee table, and her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. Weird. What? She turned the phone toward me. It was a Google alert. From my name. My stomach dropped. She didn't notice. She was reading the notification. There's some tech guy with the same name as you. He just got mentioned in an article about... She trailed off. I watched her face change. Confusion. Then realization. She looked up at me. Wait. I didn't say anything. Is this you? I took a breath. Yeah. She stared at me. You sold a company for... She didn't finish, just showed me the screen. The article had a number. Not exact, but close enough. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice wasn't angry, just stunned. Because I didn't want it to matter. She set the phone down, stood up, walked to the window. I need a minute, she said. Okay. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she turned around. Do you know how humiliating this is? I blinked. What? I rejected you twice because I thought you were... I don't even know what I thought. That you were broke? Aimless? You weren't wrong. I didn't correct you. But you let me believe it. I let everyone believe it. She shook her head. I don't even know what to say. I stood up. I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. It's not, and you know it's not. She crossed her arms. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to like me for me, not for what I used to do, not for what I have. That's not fair. Why not? Because you made that choice for both of us. You decided I couldn't be trusted with the truth. She had a point. I knew she had a point. You're right, I said quietly. I'm sorry. She looked at me, and I saw it in her eyes.
She wasn't angry. She was hurt. I need some time, she said. Okay. I'm not saying this is over. I'm just saying I need to process this. I understand. She walked me to the door. I left. And for the next week, we didn't talk. She didn't text, didn't call. I didn't push. I just waited and thought about what I'd done, about whether keeping my past a secret was protection or cowardice, about whether I'd been fair to her or to myself. 8 days later, she texted me. Can we talk? Yeah, when? Tonight? My place? I'll be there. I showed up at 7. She opened the door. Looked tired, but calm. Come in. We sat on the couch. She didn't waste time. I've been thinking about this a lot. Me too. And I think I understand why you did it. I waited. You were protecting yourself from people who only see the money. I get that. But you also didn't trust me. I started to argue. She held up a hand. Let me finish. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying it hurt because I liked you, the real you, the guy who reads in coffee shops and helps people for free and drives a shitty Honda. I almost smiled. And if you'd told me on the first date, yeah, maybe I would have acted differently. Maybe I would have been weird about it. Probably. But you didn't give me the chance to prove I wouldn't be. She was right. You're right. I know. She leaned back. So here's what I'm thinking. Okay? I still want to see you, but I need you to be honest with me about everything. No more secrets. Deal. She looked at me. And I need you to trust that I'm here because I like you, not because of what you have. I do. Do you? I thought about it. I'm trying to. She nodded. That's fair. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she smiled. For what it's worth, I really wished you'd told me sooner. Why? Because I spent 6 weeks feeling like an idiot for rejecting you, and now I feel like an even bigger idiot. I laughed. You're not an idiot. I kind of am. You made a judgment based on the information you had. That's not idiotic. That's human. She looked at me. You know what's crazy? What? I think I like you more now than I did before I knew. Why? Because you chose to be nobody, and that's harder than choosing to be somebody. 3 months later, we're still together. She knows everything now, about the company, the money, the reason I left, and she doesn't treat me differently. She still splits the bill, still insists on paying sometimes, still calls me out when I'm being ridiculous. I told her I could buy her anything she wanted. She said she didn't want anything except honesty. So that's what I give her. And weirdly, I think the rejections made this stronger. Because she didn't fall for the money. She didn't fall for the idea of me. She fell for the guy who was willing to be rejected. The guy who wasn't afraid to be ordinary. And that's the version of me I'd forgotten existed. The version I'm glad I found again. Because sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you is the thing that reminds you who you really are.